E.T. Phone Home. I'm Liam, he's Rob, and this week, well, sometimes you just have to admit when you were wrong. And after spending my whole life convinced that I didn't like E.T. and his creepy little feet, well, I decided it'd be a good time to finally give it a second chance. And my days, aren't I glad I did. Now, God knows if Rob has changed his tune. His disdain for E.T. always seemed more vociferous than my own, but to say I've done a full 180 would be a massive understatement. With fantastic cinematography, unrelenting sense of wonder, it's truly fantastic score from John Williams, and exceptional performances across the board, I am now an unapologetic E.T. convert, even if, like Drew Barrymore, I still find his feet unbearably creepy. Now, Rob, I'd be fucking amazed if you've gone as hard as me in terms of the 180, but do you have a new opinion on this film, or do you still hate E.T.?
I'm not going to give you my feelings just yet because I've literally just finished this film. Like before we started recording, I just finished the ending. So I'm jumping straight to the ending. It's sticking in my mind. If you're trying to escape the feds and your bright beacon of a ship is telling everybody where you are, maybe don't fucking hang around and say goodbye. Maybe just leave.
Like, what, the aliens, you mean?
Yeah. Right at the end, they're escaping the feds. And it took fucking 10 minutes to say goodbye. You're trying to get him off the planet. How about you just pop him on a ship and say goodbye to him?
I think you're kind of missing the point of that by that part of the film. Everybody shows up. And I think one of the actual important things in this film, and one of the things I totally misremembered, because this film goes like full peanuts. Like, you don't see another human's face beyond Mary's for 76 minutes. It's amazing. Like, you know, the whole idea that you're seeing it from a child's perspective.
That I liked.
Or E.T.'s perspective, who's also a child. And, you know, that works on two levels as well. This idea that you're getting the sense of wonderment of seeing it from a child's perspective and meeting an alien. But then you're also seeing it from E.T.'s perspective, and he actually delivers a sense of wonderment in like the everyday and the mundane. And that comes down to the cinematography, which we'll get into. But by the end, when you finally do get the scientists on screen and they meet Mary, and you finally get that detachment from this kind of childish world, and suddenly E.T. and what's happened to these kids is forced into, you know, the grown-up quote unquote real world. I kind of thought, they're all going to be evil government agents, and you're just like, no, they're actually all quite nice for the most part, and they're trying to do.
Only Keys is. Key turns out to be, you think he's going to be a dick.
Surprisingly lovely.
You think he's going to be a dick, but he's lovely. He just wants to meet an alien, so that's fine. He got to see it. That's by the by. But they're all still trying to chase these kids down. If they're so nice about the alien, how about you just let him? All you know, he wants to bury the alien. Just leave it go. Like, they finally got to the fucking end of it, and it took 15 minutes to say goodbye. You've got the fucking police on your tail. Just fuck off. Just say goodbye.
I think the aliens realize, and I think everyone realized, maybe except you, they don't need to like disappear quickly now because everybody's stopped. And
not everybody has stopped. Not every Fed rocked up then and looked up. It was
That's exactly
Keys.
what they did.
No, it was
everybody lines up and they're just like, fuck. It's a fucking spaceship.
Yeah,
it's kind of like the end of Close Encounters. For all the talk of, you know, scientific experimentation, all these other things, and that's kind of the point of this movie and the point of Close Encounters to a certain extent, is eventually that sense of wonderment. And you know, you can make the argument that Close Encounters is basically the same film from just a different perspective. That's from the adult's perspective, this is from the child's perspective. But ultimately, when you see something that fantastic in the end, regardless of what your intentions are, it all just kind of stops. And everybody, and that's the vintage classic Spielberg shot, just showing people's reactions. And that's what you get at the end. Everybody just looking up at a spaceship going, fuck, it's a fucking spaceship.
I'd be stood in the forest going, just say goodbye. Fucking hell. Why are we there? Just say goodbye. I fucking hated it. Right, my feelings.
Yes.
My feelings on this film. I have gone on record many times, and I can't believe how fucking easy you were to convince otherwise. But I have said I hated this film, and I've only ever watched it once. I watched it as a kid, and obviously I never clicked with it.
Same here.
Watching it again, I will take my hatred away. It is basically just a mid-film. And for most part, dude, and this is where you're going to hate me, it's boring.
By the way, I hate the term mid as well. It's just one of those terms which you just get, it feels like a kind of Gen Z kind of term. Oh, that's so mid. It makes my fucking toast go.
It's so middle of the road. But it's boring. Like it's very boring. From a kid's point of view, I get it. It's fantastical for the kids. You know, there's an alien. The kids are having their own adventure, but like, you barely see an adult. And I already said I like the fact you don't see an adult. But
Mhm.
seeing it from my perspective now, I can see things like it's shot beautifully. The score, like you said, it looks great. I even to a point of the story, I can understand what's going on with it. But for the most part, it's boring. And
See,
I
that's the
probably won't watch it
argument.
again.
You're not alone in that argument at all. And I'm not going to start trying to like immediately change your mind because I've only just changed my own mind. It'd be completely hypocritical of me. But when you read online, you don't get me wrong, for every, and there are many people who would consider this maybe even Spielberg's greatest films, and it's usually up in like the top three. And I like watching it again, I can actually understand it. But then there is a counter argument to that ET is creepy and that it's just, to use your term there, it is just boring. I, however, was completely caught up in the wonderment and the magic of this film, like a fucking child. And it's strange that I watched this as an adult and that happened, but it didn't happen to me when I was younger. I did find it boring. And I did find ET creepy. And now watching it now, and I think maybe ET's design being creepy is kind of half the point. Like if
No,
they
he's
made
still
it
creepy.
nowadays, no, he is half creepy, but he's also half cute. It's even with his sounds. Like half the time, and especially when you're introduced to him at the start of the film, where it almost plays off like horror science fiction. And he has that kind of like deep growl. And what he sounds like is, when they breed pugs and they just constantly sound like they're dying.
Yeah.
It kind of sounds like that. But then later on in the film, he has like a purr, like a cat. And in any given moment, he goes back and forth between being kind of quite alien and disturbing to being quite cute at the same time. And I think if they made it nowadays, I think they would just make the alien cute. And I think part of the genius is the fact that he is also kind of gross and appealing at the same time, which is an unbelievable achievement in many
I don't know if
respects.
he's appealing. He looks like a scrotum.
I do have that down. I do have that, despite the fact he looks like a crushed scrotum. He is kind of appealing, which is a bizarre thing to say, but I get that what you're coming from.
I will also take away what I said last week about him being an alien pedophile.
Oh,
Right?
thank God. I was going to get really upset if you'd said that.
No. But I do think now his parents ditched him.
They did.
I think, yeah.
The start is awash with bad parenting in this film.
I do think they thought, fuck this kid. He's been doing our head in. Let's go on a vacation. Let's go on holiday. Let's just fucking leave him on the planet. And then they realized, oh, fuck, we got to go and get him again. He's fucking found us.
I think it's the intergalactic equivalent of like your mum's at the shop and your kid's like fucking, oh, I want this toy. And they start crying, misbehaving on the floor. And eventually you call their bluff and say, oh, if you keep misbehaving, I'm going to leave. And they start crying, blah, blah, blah. And you just leave. You just walk the fuck out the store. But then all of a sudden, like you said, you're like, all right, we're going to have to go back and get him. And suddenly he's not in the toy aisle. And you're like, fuck, we've just lost our kid. I just think it's the intergalactic equivalent. They're basically, what are they? They're alien botanists. They're space hippies. So they're going to be pretty willy-nilly, with kind of parenting rules and stuff. And they're just like E.T. or whatever his name is. I think his actual name is supposed to be Zerk or Zrek or something weird anyway. They're like, come on, dude, come on. And he just keeps fucking around with these, and they're like, oh, that's it, we're leaving then. And they've obviously just gone too far and they've come back. He's not fucking there. Jesus Christ, we've got a situation now.
Yeah,
but they definitely bounced because it wasn't like they just went up into orbit and just stayed in orbit.
No, they hit fucking hyperspeed. They were gone.
They fucked up. Like, it was never clear in the film, but the whole idea where E.T. becomes ill is because he has that connection to his family units. Like he needs that connection to stay well. And that's why he ends up with that connection with Elliot.
Yeah.
And obviously he disconnects from Elliot because he sees that he's making Elliot sick and that leads to him dying, which is fucking distressful, I might add, but we'll get to that in a moment. It's never made quite clear, but supposedly that's the reason. So for that, and obviously he starts getting better or comes magically back to life because his gizmo has worked out in the forest and now they're coming back to Earth. So yeah, they haven't just gone up into orbit. They have, like you said, light speed. Fuck, I was like, I can't fucking stand this kid anymore. You can imagine it being the dad, can't you? No, and Cheryl's in the background going, we can't just leave. No, he had his fucking chance. Fuck him, I'm off. I'm going to the pub.
This is how he's going to learn.
Yeah,
this film is awash with 80s parenting. Like, I know it was filmed in the 80s.
Right from the start.
Like I said, to teach him a lesson, I'm going to leave him in the store or leave him on the other planet. That's fine. Mary, played by Dee Wallace, who I think was just like, do you know what? I'm going to fight every type of supernatural creature I can in the 80s. Fucking howling, critters, Halloween. Fuck me, this woman is everywhere. But
she's awesome in this as well.
Gertie's 5 years of age. And she turns around to Gertie and goes, oh, by the way, I'm just going to pick your brother up who's apparently pissed in school.
Mhm.
You stay here because it'll take me less time to get you in the car. So
Yeah,
you stay
well,
here.
this is again, it's the what they used to call it. There was a term for it in America, latchkey kids.
Latchkey kid, yeah.
So, which
Yeah, but can
basically
you be a
we
latchkey
were.
kid at 5?
I remember there was kids down the street from me. They were like the youngest kid was like 5, and the parents would go to work. And on like summer days, you could lock the door from the outside. So if you were inside, they literally couldn't get out the fucking house.
Yeah.
Like you would never in a million years have that now. But
No,
that
I
was just
know.
fucking normal in the 80s. But you get it from that opening sequence, and the opening sequence I think is absolutely like that's what convinced me. We mentioned it on last week's podcast. The reason I suddenly decided to go and do ET. It's currently on Sky Movies, and I was like, we've been tiptoeing around going back to ET for years. So I was like, I'll watch the first 10 minutes to see if it grabs me. And fuck me, did it grab me? You know, this film ticks all of the what I call them, the classic Spielberg boxes. Like right from the off, you get the wonderful lighting, the aforementioned amazing cinematography, that score, the immediate sense of wonder, and that aesthetic that I associate with the best of 80s cinema. That all starts with Spielberg, and it's strange because I could hardly remember this film, and like you said, neither of us had an attachment to it. But rewatching it, and obviously you didn't have the same impact on you, but I found it so unbelievably nostalgic. And it's because, I mean, part of it is like Stranger Things. When the kids are around the table at the start of the film, they're playing Dungeons and Dragons. It's a pretty
Yeah.
literal lift. But so much of that aesthetic, you know, it comes back to that Amblin aesthetic, which is covered in like so many of the films we've done this podcast share that Amblin aesthetic, which is almost quite unique because usually you kind of it's like its own genre. Usually you have like genre tropes and stuff like that, but with Amblin, you could have a film like E.T., which is about aliens. You could have a film like Poltergeist, which is about ghosts, and then say even something like a completely different director, and you go to like Ron Howard and Cocoon. Somehow, even though that's a completely different film, they all have this shared aesthetic, and it's just that Amblin magic that they have. But it all starts again with that warm embrace that Steven Spielberg movies
Oh,
provided
yeah.
in the early 80s.
I do agree. The beginning was great, like POV style, where again you're just seeing mid riffs of people walking around. You keep
Mhm.
seeing keys as keys, as it were, and and then it's Elliot, and nobody will believe Elliot, and you've got the kids around the table, proper 80s to
See
fuck. You've got
Thomas Howell as well.
where the fuck did I wrote that down?
I
Where did
didn't
he
know
come
either.
from?
I had no idea he
saw
was
it,
in
and
this.
I didn't recognize him at the beginning, but at the
Only
end,
it was
then when he's on
literally
the bike,
end. Yeah, dude,
yeah,
exactly the same. I went the whole film, and it was just a kid. And then when they did the chase sequence at the end, when he was suddenly getting the gang together, which I fucking love, again, so incredibly nostalgic. Do kids not
yeah.
ride BMXs anymore? Like, what the fuck? Like, we
Well, no,
all had
because if you
BMXs
ride
back
a
in the day.
BMX in a film, you've got to grow 7 foot tall, like
Oh, of
Elliot
course.
did. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
but
But yeah, it was only when it got to the bike scene, I was like, wait a minute, that's fucking C. Thomas Hall. Is that
see Thomas Howell, yeah. But when they
Howell?
were
Sorry.
when they were at the beginning, and you've got the one kid with the headphones, and I guess this started that kind of trope where you've always got to have the headphones kid or anything like that.
Yeah,
And they're
and
around,
the other kid dressed like a pimp, which
yeah,
was
yeah.
bizarre. Yeah.
And they're playing Dungeons and Dragons esque game, or
Mhm.
maybe Dungeons and Dragons. I couldn't really tell, but they're playing it in the kitchen. But it looked
Mhm.
like a diner.
Yeah,
Like
it did.
they're on a booth in a diner, which was funny. And what I loved about that, again, going back to the 80s parenting,
Mhm.
Elliot said, don't go out there. So they all decide to go out there, and they all grab kitchen knives. They're in fucking like
Yeah, they all grab
Mike's,
blades. Yeah.
they're in their friend's house, and they all pick up a knife.
Mhm.
And then when they go outside, and she makes a thing, well, why are you carrying knives? But she was more upset that they ordered a pizza than she
Classic.
was that they all went out with fucking 12-inch blades on them.
Yeah. Well, again, it's and what I loved about that sequence, it feels set like it feels staged in that Spielbergian way. But the only way I could describe it, I was trying to like, what is it about this style which works so well? And I've come down on a slightly douchey term of cinematic naturalism, where it feels specifically like a film, but the sequence feels so relatable, and nothing about their actions feel contrived, forced, or unnatural. It's like it genuinely feels like a bunch of kids. Like he's just happens to be filming a bunch of kids around the table. And even the way that Mary reacts to him, nothing feels like, oh, what should a mother say in this sequence? It's like there's a sequence just later where Elliot suddenly jumps up and calls Michael penis breath. She's like, shut up,
Yeah.
penis breath. And she has like that little laugh and then kind of like reins herself back in. Like those just little bits of magic ground the film and just make it all the more relatable. But to your point again, like the bad parent. I was just like, well, they fuck off without ET. She's just letting the kids out with blades. Somebody appears to be smoking. It's not clear who, but somebody's fucking smoking at that table.
It was
I'm just
Gertie,
like,
dude.
oh, it was Gertie. Of course, it was Gertie. And that's one of the important things we've not mentioned yet. You know, a movie of this scale, of this style, can be immediately derailed by one bad or one annoying child performance. I know you're not the biggest fan of Elliot.
We're going to disagree on
he's
this.
fucking unbelievable in this film. But I think all three kids, Michael, Gertie, and Elliot, are all exceptional in their own way. And, you know, I think it totally makes the film, especially when, like I said, for the first 76 minutes, you're basically just spending all the time with them in E.T.
So the problem I struggle with kid actors, and it's more for me now, being older than it is anything else, when they have to do their shouting, and it becomes the whiny kind of shouting.
Yeah.
It's like nails on a chalkboard. And
I get that.
Then it gets to be a bit of a problem for me. But I mean, to be fair, for the most part, I think he was great. But then when it got to the end and he's like doing the excited shouting and the screen, and then it changes again.
Which like I'm totally on board with. Like for the most part, I think his performance is legitimately exceptional.
Oh, he's great. But like, I tell you what he can't do. Sorry, before you go into that.
No, go for it.
He can't fake cry. He could fake cry. Like when he's really upset, he's acting,
totally.
Like when he's upset that ET's dead, but when he finds out ET is alive and he has to act fake cry,
he's terrible.
That's awful.
But it does kind of put into emphasis just how good he is at crying. Like one of like the most impactful sequences in the film is just him talking to an alien in a body bag. Like that's some dark shit.
Yeah,
and he, you know. I know he's talking quite literally, like, oh, I know you're dead because I can't feel anything anymore. As an adult, you're like, oh my God, like I know he means because I don't feel the connection, but you can imagine somebody like that idea of feeling numb because somebody's dead. It's like it works on both levels. And, you know, the best kinds of films, you get Pixar, stuff like that, when, you know, it works on one level for kids and works on another level for adults. And the way he delivers that sequence where it's just him and a puppy, you're like, fuck me, this kid's good. To the point where I was just like, Henry Thomas, like I was like, surely he was nominated for an Oscar because this had like 9 Oscar nominations.
Oscar nominated.
Yeah, I know, right? It missed all the big ones. It won the technical ones, unsurprisingly, special effects, sound editing, shit like that. But I was like, surely he should have been nominated. And then I checked the 1983 Oscars, and I was like, well, Paul Newman for The Verdict, Ben Kingsley won for Gandhi, Jack Lemmon for Missing, Peter O'Toole for My Favorite Year, and Dustin Hoffman for Tootsie. I was like, my God, what a fucking murderer's row of leading actors. So I was just like, all right, I'll give him that. He's great, but I'm not going to be like, you've got to kick off like, you know, Paul Newman or Peter O'Toole or Jack fucking Lemmon. So yes, I will go on that record though to say that in a movie of great performances, and Drew Barrymore is just absolute peak cute kid in this film. I still think it's Henry Thomas who is the movie's MVP because he has the heavy lifting to do with those emotional sequences. And I know you've only mentioned you weren't so fussed on the end. I fucking love the ending, the hug sequence, that the bit where he points at his chest and says, ouch, because, you know, it's not physical pain, it's emotional pain. Oh, I was like you, my wife keeps telling me I'm dead inside. But when they have
I
that
get that
moment,
a lot from my wife.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I can understand it when you watch the end of the film and that's your reaction. But when they hug, there is a shot over Elliot's shoulder of E.T. hugging him with the spaceship in the background. And I was like, fuck me. Now that's a shot. But this is a movie, and again, to bring it back to the start, awash with gorgeous shots. A bit contrived sometimes, like why is their back garden the spookiest place on earth? But there's a sequence where Elliot goes down to pick up the pizza. He's just picking up a pizza. And I'm like, that's one of the most beautiful shots I've fucking seen. It's so beautiful. Wonderfully lit.
And then the shot where he's waiting outside and you've got the weird shed shack thing.
Oh, gorgeous.
And there's a bit of light in there, but then for some reason, all of a sudden they're on a farm and it looks like there's wheat or corn in the background.
Crazy.
And
as I said, contrived for sure.
Yeah, and the light, it looks even right. The BMX shots, and I know we're jumping all over this fucking film.
That's fine.
But even the BMX shots, where they go, all of a sudden, then they've ended up in like the X Games, 1982.
Yeah.
And they must live right on top of the biggest hill ever, because everything seems to be downhill every time that they're in the world's biggest fucking housing development. They're constantly going downhill.
Yeah, they never show you the bits when they're struggling uphill. But you get, again, it's this common theme in 80s movies. It's the same with forests. All the forests in Amberlin style 80s movies, they all look like Endor. Every single
Why?
forest looks like
Why are
Endor.
they all next door as well to like a big city?
It's always the same. And like you said, like you think of the Goonies, you never see those fuckers cycling uphill. They're always just cycling downhill because that's
And
the fun bit. And again, it's supposed to be from the kid's perspective. You don't remember the bit when you were fucking huffing and puffing up a hill. You remember the bit when you were gunning it downhill. And what it's just one of those wonderful things about 80s movies. Nobody's wearing fucking lame ass. I know kids should wear cycling helmets for safety and stuff, but we didn't when we grew up, and
no,
none of the kids are here. Like when I saw Michael gun it out of the house when he comes, because they've got like a really steep driveway, he guns it down on the bike and goes down the hill. There was that old man of me like, oh, he should probably be wearing a helmet. That just looks so fucking fast. So
I
if
mean,
he comes off that bike, he's gonna do himself a mischief. I'll tell you that much.
see, Thomas Howell had some head protection, didn't he? He had the weird balaclava that seemed to have slits in the sides for his ears.
Yeah,
That was strange.
that's a classic bit of white privilege. That is, you can only get away with a balaclava if you're a white middle class kid. But that's the thing. I'm not even sure if they are white middle class kids because obviously this was set in LA, and you've got the single mum with, let's be clear, a gigantic house in the suburbs of LA.
Also,
And it's
what's
just,
her job? Because she can go to work, but
nobody
she can
knows.
come home early enough to pick up Gertie. So what's that, 2:30, 3 o'clock in America?
Doing whatever the fuck she wants. That's what I
Yeah.
mean. How could she afford this? Well, again, people could just afford better
Speaking of
houses
people
back
we
then.
didn't recognize as well, fucking
Mhm.
Erica Elenak again just rocks up.
Yeah, as I think she's
Pretty girl.
Pretty Girl, which
Yeah.
we will get. Oh, let's just deal with it now because there is a run of sequences in this film which really, like, if I had any doubt as to how much I love this film, there are 3 scenes back to back which I just thought were exceptional, and it starts with the school sequence, which I think is genuinely elite. When they're cutting Elliot's actions against the famous scene from John Ford's The Quiet Man, I'm like, this is fucking cinema gold. And isn't it strange? Like when I saw it, I was just like, that is definitely Erica Eleniak. She's just one of those girls. She's had the
Yeah,
same
you
face
could
since she
tell.
was like
Yeah.
10. But I was like, how is Elliot getting her? For one, she looks like she's 2 years older. And obviously she's very pretty, like young girl. But one of the reasons maybe she was interested in him, when he pulls up at the bus stop with his friends and he's on the BMX, I was just like, he's dressed cool as fuck.
Yeah.
He's got like a cool t-shirt on. He's got like that, like almost Back to the Future style rolled up sleeves with the
they're all
body
getting on
warmer.
the bus and he's fucking off on his BMX like, I do my own thing. I go to school on my own.
Dude, if I suddenly started, cutting around on a BMX, I think I'd dress like fucking Elliot from that sequence. He's got these dope ass like night trainers on. I was just, there's something about, and we've mentioned it loads of times, suddenly the 80s become what we think of as the 80s around 84-ish, with the fashion, everything that comes with it. If you go back and you say like Beverly Hills Cop or 48 Hours or this, and you see some of the clothes kids wear, you're like, it's pretty cool. Like early 80s clothes, like, they've just moved out of the 70s. You're just getting away from like the flares and stuff. Suddenly they're wearing like, I guess like fit, like jeans that just fit like normal jeans. There's a lot of kind of like check shirts and just like cool sports t-shirts. I'm just like, yeah, he's dressed fucking ace. Like, if he was like, what is he supposed to be in this film? Like 10 years old, 11 years old, something like that?
Yeah, something like that. So
Yeah. If he was just dressed, say, your kid, you just dressed him like Elliot, nobody would be like, oh, you're doing a throwback. You're like, dude, your kid looks the fucking business. He's just cool as shit. He's going to end up with Erica Eleniak. I can tell you that fucking much right now. But yeah, I love that sequence. I love the fact that fucking E.T. just crushes beers, not sips beers, crushes beers.
them. And he gets pissed with it as well. That's what a way to get pissed, You just
Awesome.
Fucking by association, I guess.
He's good at being drunk.
Well,
terrible at fake crying, good at being drunk.
That scene as well.
Mm-hmm.
How fucking awful is it that you're dissecting frogs that aren't dead, just knocked out? You've chloroformed the frog.
I was going to ask you, did your like school? Did you ever like dissect frogs in school when you were younger?
Dude, there's no way my school was giving us fucking scalpels. They wouldn't even let us have a Bunsen burner on. The teacher would do it behind protective glass.
Well, what school did you go to again?
Rumney High.
Oh, you went to Rumney. See, I went to Cardiff High
Cardiff
School.
High, yeah, of course you did.
They were handing out blades at the front door.
Yeah, no, they wouldn't give them to fucking us, dude. I
was the rough kid, man. I was from Broke, I was with all the kids from fucking, King.
Oh, dude, we would have looked down on you. You're 7 foot tall, but we still would have looked down on you if you were in the Rumney High.
It might surprise you. I wasn't 7 foot tall when I was in high school, but yes.
But fucking yeah. So when it was time to do like any experiment, like the Bunsen burner come out, or you get the was it the potassium, you put it in the water and it fizzes and explodes. the teacher would do that behind protective glass. We weren't allowed anywhere near it. We weren't allowed anywhere near. I mean, to be fair, one of the kids once did steal the fucking tube full of that potassium and put it into the school toilets. So
ruining it for everyone else.
I kind of understand why, but no, there's no way we were allowed frogs and fucking blades. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I mean, what I did find it strange is that they had to basically kill the frogs or put them to sleep themselves, and then I guess you get like a clearer idea of the inside workings of a frog. But it's pretty dark. Like I'm surprised that it took a connection to an extraterrestrial, a very literal connection, to suddenly have the empathetic, kind of drive to try and save these frogs. Nowadays, you'd be like, I'm not fucking killing these frogs. This is fucked up, dude.
Was that every frog in LA? Because that was a lot of frogs for that class.
It did seem like a lot of frogs. Did they just go to the frog dissection store? But I guess if they're doing it old school, who knows? But anyway, I thought that sequence was fantastic, especially not with it just being cut with John Ford's Quiet Man, but cutting it alongside E.T. getting pissed. And watching TV, that's another thing about 80s characters. They all, if you're an alien, you're fucking monster, whatever, they all just love TV. I think of like Gizmo, shit like that. They just love watching American TV. Then he goes straight to Mary almost meets E.T., which is just some of the great physical comedy in this film, where she keeps walking. It's almost like fucking Austin Powers, where E.T. keeps falling over and she almost sees him, but she doesn't. And Gertie's fantastic in that sequence. And then it goes straight to the phone home sequence, which is just like, my fucking days, man. To just have those three sequences back to back, I was like, unbelievable. But yeah, by then, of course, I was completely on board. And I even love the fact that it's similar to Jaws. I think this movie actually benefits from the whole, what's the term I'm looking for here? Limitations are the mother of invention. Necessity is the mother of invention. That's the saying I'm going for. Where if they had CG and stuff and ET could go jumping around, I don't think it would have been as good, similar to Jaws, where they had to only show you glimpses of the shark, where they had to use ET relatively sparingly and in like very specific situations. I think it actually benefits the film hugely.
It does, and a lot of it, like I said, you see from his point of view, or when he's doing a lot of the walk and he's covered in a cloth or a tablecloth because he's a ghost and stuff like that. So I think done very well. It's really hard to pinpoint like why this film just didn't click with me. Other than the fact that it just felt boring. It's more for a kid. There are things that I will go on record say that I enjoyed compared to the last time I watched it, which I fucking was probably about 9 or 10. So we're talking 30 years ago since I've seen this film. But yeah, it didn't click with me. But what it did make me think, I would like to show this to my kid because I think my kid might enjoy it.
I think so.
Yeah, he's 5 now. So
it's hard because again, a lot of it depends on whether it is such a douchey thing to say, but that sense of wonder, if it grabs you, and this time it did for me, and that'll get because you think if you're a kid, and I'm sure you'll have a better understanding than I do, is that idea that kids get bored easily. Yeah. And if this film doesn't connect with the kid, if they're not getting that sense of magic, then I can imagine they would get bored pretty quickly. And I think one of the reasons maybe it worked for me so much more this time is I'm watching it in a different way. Like I've never watched E.T. with a critical eye, for instance. And that is one of the things about this podcast is not only are we going back and revisiting these films, but we are fundamentally watching them in a different way where you are like picking them apart to a certain extent. And I think because I'm looking for those aspects, how they're making the film, blah, 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 blah. I'm saying like, that's where I'm kind of the magic is really getting to me. And, even the fact that they just don't make films like this anymore, which sounds douchey, but it was the same when we mentioned Jaws. Close Encounters is another one, which we'll end up doing this podcast at some point, is the fact that they allow themselves to be slower paced. Modern movies are so much quicker. This allows itself to just be like, there's not going to be a huge amount happening, and it doesn't matter. Of course, you've got to connect to it one way or another for that to work. But for me, at least, a big part of it is just, it comes back to that cinematography, the way that Spielberg puts you in their shoes. It's not just a film about kids, it's putting you in the position of a kid. And I think maybe that's, again, one of the reasons why I find it nostalgic. And one of the reasons it was such a big hit. And that's one of the things it's easy to forget. This movie was in the cinema for over a year. And if you and it wasn't on VHS until 1988. Spielberg said you're not allowed to put this on VHS because he didn't want to diminish the memory, which sounds like pretty, full of shit. But he was like, I just want to keep this a cinematic experience, which I really do appreciate in many respects. And obviously, when it did finally come out on VHS in '88, it was a massive hit, as you'd expect. But adjusted for inflation, This is the fourth biggest movie of all time, and his biggest movie quite comfortably. It's only behind Gone with the Wind, A New Hope, and the third one is always a bit of a surprise to me. The Sound of Music is the third biggest movie of all time when
I don't
adjusted
think
for
that's much of a
inflation.
surprise because people love that film. I think
Yeah, but when you think about
it's
it,
not
like
for us,
E.T.
but
is bigger
yeah.
than Avatar, it's bigger than Titanic. You think of what a big deal like Endgame was. E.T. is a much bigger film than those if adjusted for
Yeah.
inflation. The ones that will surprise you, and I may have brought this up on the podcast before, but every time I see them, they surprise me. If you could guess the 8th, ninth, and 10th biggest movies of all time when adjusted for inflation, I will fucking eat my foot.
Oh, dude, I've never been good at these.
These are all right, I'm just going to tell you because like I would never get these. Number 8, Dr. Zhivago.
Okay.
Number 9, The Exorcist.
I
R
see that.
rated.
I see that.
But yeah. And number 10, Snow White, which I get is kind of
The
more
Disney
along the
Snow.
lines of
Obviously Disney Snow.
the
Yeah.
animated one, which is
Yeah.
kind of similar to probably why Gone with the Wind will never be beaten, just because of the nature of cinema at that time. There wasn't, people didn't have loads of other things to do, so everyone just went to the fucking cinema and watched Gone with the Wind. So it'll probably never be beaten when it comes to adjusted for inflation. But Dr. Zhivago is probably the one that always captures my
I
attention.
love where we went different on this film. You've done the investigation, you've gone, it's the biggest film, these are the other biggest films, you've done that. I fell down a rabbit hole I probably shouldn't have fallen down, but it's led me to something
Classic Rob. This is why this podcast works.
I really want to watch. So Peter Coyote, who played Keys.
Brilliant. This one.
I started looking at his IMDb list.
Mm-hmm.
And one film really interested me, The Hebrew Hammer.
Oh, Hebrew. Okay, I haven't seen that one.
It's a Jewish blaxploitation film. Right?
I didn't know those existed.
2003.
God damn.
So Adam Goldberg, you know Adam Goldberg?
Yeah, I know Adam Goldberg,
yeah. He plays Mordecai Jefferson Carver, right? And I'll tell you
Mordecai.
Yeah, I'll tell you
name.
the synopsis in a second.
Mm-hmm.
But Peter Coyote and Judy Greer is in this, I'm guessing, plays his daughter, and Mario Van Peebles. Fucking big, like
some proper names in this, yeah.
But he plays a character called JJL Chief Blumenbergen Steinenthal.
Fantastic. I can't like you are like once again convinced me to watch what I assume will be complete nonsense. What is it on IMDb, if you don't mind me asking? The score
on IMDb, it is 6.1.
6.1. That's solid. That's solid.
Yeah. Well, ET is what on this?
7.9, I think.
7.9. So it's not far. So the Hebrew Hammer, right?
No, you can't suddenly throw that in. The Hebrew Hammer, pretty close to ET, mate. Not far off.
Yeah. So the synopsis for the Hebrew Hammer.
Yeah, go for it.
When a psychotic Santa tries to destroy Hanukkah by hypnotizing Jewish children with bootleg copies of the Christmas classic It's a Wonderful Life, it's up to the Hebrew Hammer to save the day. Together with Mohammed, head of the Kwanzaa Liberation Front, the Hammer takes no prisoners in his quest to hunt down the renegade Santa and make the holiday season safe for all. I mean, it's a Christmas film, dude.
It's a Christmas film. See, now we'll find out that it has like its own ride at Universal Studios, like ET, and we just didn't know. There's like the Hebrew Hammer.
Do you know
ride.
what? I might have to make the Hebrew Hammer one of my Christmas picks.
Oh, dude, I mean, at this point, I'm like, well, I'm kind of interested. I'm not sure how many downloads we'll get. I don't know how many people have watched the Hebrew Hammer, so that could be an issue. Speaking of which, have you ever been to Universal Studios in Florida?
No, you've asked before. No, I've never been to America.
I didn't think Oh, that's it. I do apologize. Well, I went, again, similar to, like, as we talked about earlier, just having no connection to ET. I remember the ET ride and it's still there, unbelievably. It was old when I went in, like, 2008. And it's been there since like the mid to late 80s, and it has like an introduction from Steven Spielberg, and the whole ride was lost on me. You sit on the bike, there's like animatronics. It's very old fashioned in many respects, but obviously it still proves pretty popular. Completely lost on me. I kind of wish I could revisit it. Like if I'd watched the film yesterday and you gave me the opportunity to go back on the ride, I would have fucking jumped at the chance. That's how much of a fucking turnaround I've had, to the point where I started thinking, we mentioned it a few times, like the great directorial runs in history. So if I take, like, I've completely changed my mind on this film. So I have to suddenly, when I'm thinking about the best runs in cinema history from a director, and I suddenly look at Jaws 75, Close Encounters 77, there is an issue here, 1941 in 79, which isn't a fantastic movie, Raiders in 81, E.T. in 82, and Temple of Doom in 84. Like in terms of its influence, in terms of the quality, the only ones I could come up with, there was Rob Reiner's run from 84 to 92, which is unbelievable. Nolan had an amazing run in the noughties. I know you're not as big a fan, but Villeneuve had a great run with Sicario and all that jazz. Paul Thomas Anderson had a great run between Magnolia and The Master. I would argue Tarantino hasn't made a bad movie. But I don't think any of these are anywhere near as iconic as Spielberg's run from, as I said, 77 through to 84. The only one that comes close, and you could make an argument for it, is Alfred Hitchcock's run from 1958 to 1963, when uninterrupted, he directed Vertigo, North by Northwest, Psycho, and The Birds. And I'm like, okay, that's actually pretty fucking awesome. There's no 1941 in there. So that might actually just tip it in his scales. But I think those are the two maybe elite directorial runs. I was going to say in recent history, going back to the history of all time, I suppose. But yeah, Jaws through Temple of Doom is pretty goddamn special.
Oh yeah, there's no denying Spielberg is a fantastic director, and there's no denying the Spielbergness of this film. Like honestly, I can't deny the way it's shot or anything.
I get that. You can
what I love as well. There was one scene.
I was just going to say, in your defense, I think you can totally appreciate this as a piece of art, especially on a technical level, but still find it boring. I totally understand that.
What I loved is the one when he finds out E.T.'s alive and he does his fake crying, and then he starts, and it's good, mind. To be fair, I mean, I'll give him his due for this. Henry Thomas, when he then walks past the flowers, and then the flowers are coming back to life, he starts crying again to get the guy's attention away from it.
Magic.
But then you get the scene where he's in that weird doorway with his brother. You can only hear him because he's shouting, but you don't know what he's saying. And he's saying E.T.'s alive, but you've got the steam or the smoke go in to, I guess, to clear him off. What the fuck's that called? When you got to go through that shower thing,
like airlocky kind of thing.
Yeah.
I know what you mean. Yeah, there is another word for it, but I know what you mean.
Yeah, and I was going to say antiseptic. It's not antiseptic, but and he's just telling me he's alive, and it's just the emotion that you can see in the both of them. I think that, and the shot again doesn't feel like level. It's coming down a little bit, so you're looking kind of up at them, and it's such a great shot.
Yeah, the whole film's a wash. There's a sequence where Elliot is just looking out the window when he's doing the dishes earlier in the film, and he just lets the steam like rise up over his face as he's looking out. It doesn't really. You just but it just makes the sequence look gorgeous. And I actually never realized there's such a direct link to Hook in this film. I mean, when Mary's reading Gertie, she's very literally reading her Hook or Peter Pan, more specifically. But it's not just the fact that she's reading Peter Pan. When she's reading it, you rather than showing her directly, you see her outline, her shadow. Thank you, Jesus Christ. Her shadow on the wall, and that's directly lifted into Hook. Then, and just like again with John Williams's score, like it's an homage to his own movie, which is great because there are homages to this in other films. Like I never knew the whole "it's working" is then taken by George Lucas for episode 1. I always just thought it was a really annoying line that felt completely out of place. And I just don't think George Lucas is very good at doing direct homage. Obviously, his films are inherently homage. Star Wars is homaging, and same with Indiana Jones, the old serials of the 30s, 40s, sci-fi of the 50s, blah, blah, blah. But when he's doing direct lines, that it's working, which is taken from this, horrible, and then Darth Vader at the very end of Revenge of the Sith, where no, and of course, if you know what he's going for, you're like, well, he's going for the whole, tragic monster, Frankenstein, all that, but it doesn't sound like ass. So he's terrible at that, but at least Spielberg is good at referencing his own stuff, because I think that Hook sequence with Gertie and Mary is actually quite magical.
Contamination. When they go through the decontamination area.
Good man.
Thank you. Man. I was doing my head in. But what I liked as well, and I know they've because we watched it in what was the fucking crappy opera Star Wars we watched? There was a scene there was a scene
in episode 3 with where he's talking about Darth Plagueis the Wise and all that jazz.
Yeah, that fucking crappy part. But you see the ET aliens.
That's not the same secret. Yeah, but that's from episode.
No. But I thought it was episode. It doesn't fucking matter. Whatever film you made me watch where the ET aliens are in Star Wars.
Yeah.
And then you've got ET in this, and he passes Yoda, and it's like that
really
link
good.
is like,
Really good Halloween outfit, by the way.
But does he look at Yoda because he looks like an alien, or does he look at Yoda because he knows that species?
I didn't even think of that. That's really like kind of cutting in there, like the idea that these are in like a shared universe because
Yeah.
ETs are in Star Wars. ET is, and then Star Wars are also in Indiana Jones because they're shown on the hieroglyphs on the side of the wall. So you have all this crossover. It's like, does he just? I just think because he looks like an alien. But now that you've said that, it's like, yeah, maybe he does recognize that kind of species of aliens. So it's just like, holy shit, that looks just like fucking Dave. What the fuck? But yeah, I love that sequence. Again, it's not the normal thing to shoot a Halloween sequence in broad daylight, especially kind of LA sunshine. But when the sun's going down and they're all like walking around the streets and they're in their outfits, you're like, man. Unsurprisingly, Spielberg's got quite the eye on him, hasn't he? But yeah, big fan of that. What was I going to say? It's almost bizarre that we've gone this far and we've not mentioned the flying bike sequence. The first one's the famous one where it's just Elliot and he goes across the moon, and obviously that's the shot. That comes out of fucking nowhere when you watch the film. Like, later on, when when I think of that sequence, I thought it was the bit when all the gang's together and they all go flying. That bit is like there's build up to it. The cops are there, excuse me, you're like, oh, okay, they're going to go flying off. In this bit, they're just on the bike. I don't really know what he's trying to do. And then all of a sudden they're flying and you get them. You don't care because the fucking John Williams score comes in, the magic fucking delivers. But I was just like, that sequence just came out of nowhere. Narratively, it's just apropos of absolutely nothing. But it's such an iconic sequence, you don't really care, I suppose.
Again, this isn't the way we both see this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Great scene. Like, it looks like the Elliot one is great, and then you get the guys at the end and they're escaping the cops and everything.
Yeah.
Why are they still fucking pedaling when they're flying?
I didn't notice that. Old habits die hard, I suppose. But yeah, it is weird.
Yeah, but you've got no traction. Why are you pedaling?
I think because maybe you're not expecting to fly. I think that's the important part.
I get that. You're not expecting to fly, but after flying for 10 or 15 minutes, maybe stop pedaling.
Yeah. I think after a while, I'll give you that. I like for a minute or two, I might be just like, is my pedaling kind of keeping us moving in the sky? I kind of be like loath to stop just in case I dropped out of the sky. But after like a little bit, you're like, I'm pretty sure this is gone nothing.
Because if pedaling is making you going, what happens if you pull your brakes?
Oh yeah, you just drop the fuck out the sky.
Exactly.
You haven't thought it through. But yeah, you're the only person looking at their feet, whatever. Oh, it's so magical with the moon stuff. You're just like, why are you idiots pedaling, you fucking morons? Which is, I mean, this all comes, and I'm talking about the bit with the kids on the bikes. That comes after E.T. dies, which is a scene I always remembered. I remember it being quite harrowing and quite upsetting when I was younger. Maybe one of the reasons I wasn't fussed in this film. Rewatching it as an adult, yes, it's fucking harrowing because the way they film it, and they used real doctors in that sequence. They weren't actors, they were real doctors. And it totally shows. And he said to him, it's like, we want you, Spielberg basically said to him, it's like, treat E.T. as if he's a real child and do what you would do in a hospital in this situation. And that's why it all feels so real. And they let the kids watch. Like, E.T.'s dying and nobody tries to remove the kids. Even Gertie's there. It's like, no. Let the kids watch. They need to learn. And the thing I remember really not liking as a kid, and I'm still not fussed on it now, it's effective in its own way. Question one, why does E.T. look like an old dog poo when he's dying? He goes that weird grey ashy
That's
color.
going ashy and...
Two, like BMXs, what happened to old dog poos? You never see them anymore. When I was younger, I used to see those weird grey ashy dog poos which had been out in the sun too long all the fucking time. You never see them anymore. You never see them anymore.
That's because you get fined now if you leave your dog shit around.
Maybe that's it. Maybe people just aren't leaving their dog shit around, and it gets cleaned up super quick. Because I have a very vivid memory of seeing those weird grey ET looking dog turds when I was younger, and they've just disappeared. You just can't find them anymore. They're like cola bottles and shrimps. They just live in the memory. Just gone.
On old ET dog turds. Should we move on to the next section?
You don't. Well, I do want to mention the fact that they show up in his house in NASA spacesuits. That felt fucking bananas.
And they just clearly had just a lot of plastic tubing just ready to go.
Yeah. They brought so much.
Yeah.
It looked like they were fumigating the house rather than dealing with an alien. But The one last thing I want to mention, because I was going to mention the end, but you're not so big a fan. Like the cheesiest thing at the end should have been the rainbow when the ship goes off and it leaves like a rainbow behind. By that point, I was so on board with the score, the emotions, everything. I was just like, nah, they deserved it. They earned that fucking rainbow. But I'm not sure if you remember, this was quite a few years ago, and it was around the same time that Lucas was fucking around with the Star Wars film. Spielberg went back and he removed, when they released the first special edition,
the
guns, and I didn't remember that until I saw the sequence with the kids cycling towards the cops, and I didn't think about the walkie-talkies. What I thought was, they've got fucking shotguns. I was like, that is hardcore. Like, these are kids, trying to escape. It's all a bit of fun, and then suddenly they run into cops rocking shotguns. I don't agree with changing movies. I think it's, as an art form, you should just leave them be for the most part. I'm not saying about not tightening them up, but fundamentally changing them isn't a good thing. I can see where Spielberg was coming from when he looked back and went, I went pretty fucking hard with those shotguns, didn't I? Like, what the fuck have they got? If they had handguns, it'd be fine, but shotguns, he might as well have bazookas. Imagine if they'd opened fire on those kids with shotguns.
It made me think of Con Air randomly.
Yeah,
the scene where was it not Column the other one, Columini.
Mm-hmm.
When they go in, shoot the tires. Fuck the tires. I'm going for the pilot. I can just think one of those guys like, fuck the tires. I'm going for the fucking kid.
I'm going for the kid in the stupid red hoodie. I'm smoking him. So yeah, while I disagree fundamentally with him changing out the shotguns, and obviously the latest versions, it's brought the shotguns back. I can see why at one point he looked at it and went, man, I went fucking hard with those shotguns, man. But anyway, yes, let's move on to favorite scene. So as we've already mentioned, whether you like the movie or not, there is plenty to choose from. There is undeniably plenty to choose from, from a purely aesthetic perspective. For me, and I could have picked one of 5 or 6, but I mentioned earlier, I think the school sequence, I totally forgot about the school sequence with the whole John Ford Quiet Man thing. I thought that sequence was absolutely amazing. Just the way it was shot, the way you had E.T. getting drunk, smashing the beers, I was just like, it was so charming. And I remember that being really the moment when I was watching the film where I was just like, I don't just like this film, I think I kind of love this film. So that's the one for me.
For me, it's the Halloween scene.
Mm-hmm.
When they dress him up and you got Dee Wallace taking the picture, not knowing Gertie's not in there. And I mean, again, it's fine. Just send a 5-year-old a mile down the road to wait on Halloween for her brothers to show up. Like, the mother doesn't, so that's not bad parenting at this point.
How do you not love the 80s, man?
Like, it's fucking in it. But and then as you're walking through and you've got all the Halloween costumes and the nostalgia and that kicks in hard. And it's lovely. It's a lovely shot. The shot through the eye holes.
Oh yeah,
of ET, and he's seeing everything going on, and he doesn't understand that it's Halloween. He's wondering why they've put a fucking blanket over his head. But then, where did all these weird looking humans come from all of a sudden? And why do I know that guy? As you said, that's Dave from down the road, like down the Nebula. Like, and it's just it's shot beautifully. I think it's such a great scene. Of all the scenes I picked, I like the Halloween scene.
It comes back to that point I made earlier about, like, you're getting a double dose of wonder. You're getting the shots from the kid's point of view, but you're also getting a shot from E.T.'s point of view, and both of them work, and they're kind of interspliced, and it just keeps the movie ticking along quite nicely, even if a huge amount isn't actually happening from a kind of action perspective, as it were.
Yeah.
In terms of loves and hates, my 3 loves: number 1, the cinematography and subsequent sense of wonder establishing even the most mundane scenes. We mentioned earlier, Elliot doing the dishes. Like, how the fuck did you make that look so gorgeous? Going to pick up a pizza, one of the most beautiful shots I've seen in a movie in a long time. The bit with the shed, obviously, you get that, he meets E.T. in the shed, or you get the hand poking out. But that's not the gorgeous. It's just the bit when they go out into the garden and you just see the shed. And it's like, does the lighting make any sense? No, none whatsoever. Does it look fucking amazing? Yes. It's like, even at like the edge of the garden, there's like a weird red light to kind of give you a sense of like foreboding. There's no reason for that light to be there. Why would you have a creepy red light there? I didn't even think about the fact that they apparently have a forest in their back garden. Anyway, moving on. Number 2, just about every performance, but as I mentioned earlier, Henry Thomas delivers one of the great child performances of all time. I really think he's that good. And number 3, the Williams score, which, ultimately sounds familiar because it sounds a bit like all the Williams scores, but yes, fantastic. And that's that sense of nostalgia, I think.
For me, it makes me miss the 80s.
Yeah.
I fucking miss the just seeing a lot of these things, thinking, oh yeah, you could just be left anywhere you wanted. And we've mentioned it before about going out until the streetlights come out, and like nobody knew where you were. I fucking hell, you would go being blood brothers, actually cutting your own skin and fucking passing around weird diseases and playing in the fucking stream and brick wars
Well,
and
it's just when you were brick
it's
wars,
like
of course.
yeah,
It was like when we looked back at Big when we did that, and
yeah,
we started questioning when I get the name of his best friend, and he every day he goes from like the
Billy,
suburbs. Billy goes into the city every day to meet up with Tom Hanks,
yeah.
and you're just like, surely he couldn't do that. He's only 11. It's just like, well, he can do whatever he wants if he's got the money to get a train ticket, and he can, as long as he can get back home by the time it's dark. You could go as far as you could. It's kind of like remember the film Gattaca? This is a weird one
Yeah,
to bring out,
yeah,
where
yeah.
they swim out as far as they can, but the idea is it's not just swim out as far as you can because you have to swim back as well. So it's like testing both your bravery and your actual fitness. Well, it was like that when you were younger. It's like you could go as far as you fucking wanted, but you had to be able to get back before dark. It was like this race against time towards the end, which again I think was unique to the 80s because everyone knows where the fucking kids are all the time now. It can't be as fun.
The score again.
Yeah.
John Williams. You fucking can't go wrong with John Williams. Can you?
No, you can't. There's a new documentary out, a John Williams score, and I'm not sure if I've only watched the trailer so far, but unsurprisingly, it's Spielberg talking about it. And he goes, you really notice just how important a John Williams score is to any movie when if you remove the score. So if you
Yeah,
see a scene from E.T. or a scene from Jaws, the same scene, but you remove the score from John, it's just like, oh no, it doesn't work. It does so much of the reason you get that sense of wonderment, or in the sense with George, you get that sense of dread or foreboding, whatever. So much of it is driven by the music.
yeah. I mean, and you just picture the conversations you're having with John Williams in it. John, you don't need to go hard on this, right? It's just about a man that flies. You don't need to go hard. Produces a fucking banger. Dude, this is just about a guy with a whip who's gone to another country to find some sort of fucking ark.
Mhm.
Like you don't need. Oh no, that's fine. Do you remember the one I did for the Flying Man? Wait, fucking just wait. Like just
Yeah.
banger after banger that guy does, and it's
Oh
like
yeah, yeah.
challenge
Even
accepted.
even Star Wars. I know you're not an episodes one, or even a Star Wars fan, but it's like following up your own work. It's like you've done the Star Wars trilogy, and it's like 1999. We're bringing Star Wars back, and you're like, well, we're obviously going to go with the original tune stuff. Like, no, 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 I'm going to do something new. It's like something new, but the original one's so iconic, and then it comes back with Duel of the Fates, and you're like, fuck me, dude. Just everything is gold. Everything is a home run. In terms of an artist in their field, you can make an argument for John Williams being the most successful of all time.
Yeah.
Without is there anyone who can even touch him? I don't think so. Anyway, is that all
Uh,
your loves?
no, that was only two.
Sorry, my apologies.
The third one is shot beautifully.
Yeah,
I think it's
gorgeous.
shot like for the most part, it's shot beautifully.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, because
that's
even
it.
there were limited special effects in this film. You get like the floating balls and the spaceship, and obviously the kids, flying up into the sky. But because they're used sparingly, those special effects, I think for the most part they age pretty well. And if nothing else, nostalgia kind of gets you over the finish line, I suppose. In terms of hates, number one, E.T. is still kind of ugly. There's no getting around it. I mentioned earlier his feet are creepy. You get that fantastic ad-lib line by Drew Barrymore, which you
Yeah.
mentioned. He's cute and creepy, but he is creepy. You mentioned this earlier. Elliot's screams can get a tad much. As fantastic as he is in this movie, when he does his high pitched screaming, you are like, oh my God, there's a reason I don't have kids. Jesus fucking wept. Steve, played by Sean Fryer, dressed like a pimp, it's just inexplicable. And number four, I mentioned earlier, E.T. looking like a dried 80s poop. And I call them 80s poop because they don't exist anymore. So those are my hates.
For me, it was ET looking like a scrotum.
Yes, fair
You
enough,
said
yeah.
drive. He looks like a scrotum to me. I got four as well. It was Elliot's high pitched screaming. I just couldn't stand. It got to me a bit. And the other two are just well. These are all my hates. They're not just all for me. Why are you fucking cycling when you're flying? It just really, really annoyed me.
There's always something weird in these films which drives up the
Yeah.
wall, isn't there?
And the ending, my fourth.
Oh,
Just like you've rescued him. The fucking family have realized their mistake about fucking leaving him. They've come back. They said, "All right, no, we're not going to get our social security or our child benefit without him, so we'll come back and get him." But fucking hell, there's people
that's
on your
right.
tail.
Kat is right. You are dead. Like my wife says, I'm dead inside. You're just a whole
Dude,
step up again. How you can watch the end of that film and be like, fucking hell, get on the fucking ship and piss off, for God's sake, ET.
I took stick when that fucking horse like disappeared in the mud as well in Never Ending
Hey,
Story.
I agreed with that. I thought that was overplayed. I like the whole point with that is like, why did we give a fuck about the horse? It was just like the horse is just showing up. ET, we spent the whole film with them. They've got that connection. I was on board, but fair enough. Fair enough.
That's it.
Alternative
That's fine.
titles. I know that the only one I know is like I know the working title for this film was A Boy's Life, which is not fantastic, by the way. I'd like to add. I'm glad
No.
they went with ET the Extra-Terrestrial, just in case you didn't know what ET meant.
Right, what we got
No, because
here?
that's what it is, right?
Yeah,
It's fundamentally extraterrestrial, the extraterrestrial. That's what
yeah,
that is. It's
yeah.
bananas.
It's like when you say, "I need to go to the ATM machine."
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah. I need to go to the machine.
yeah. Bulgaria, the alien.
No, far too threatening.
Estonia, ET, a friend from afar.
That's okay.
Greece, ET, the alien.
Again, yeah.
Uh, Kazakhstan, I said it right this time.
There we go. Nailed it.
Other planetary.
No, not no one.
Lithuania, stranger.
No, that sounds like a fucking Peeping Tom movie.
That should be in Lithuania. Fucking ET. Yeah. Signing a register. What else we got here? Vietnam, ET, alien creatures.
No,
And
again,
that's it, really.
too
Basically, it
bad.
is ET, the extraterrestrial.
In terms of facts, I know there's a whole fucking mess of them, so please, sir, pick your favorite ones.
Yep. So most of the full body puppetry was performed by a 2'10" tall stuntman. But the scenes in the kitchen were done using a 12-year-old boy who was born without legs, but was an expert on walking on his hands.
Yeah, it was like a combination of like different people in suits and animatronics. I think they
Yeah.
spent 10% of the budget on the animatronics. It was actually I forget the name of the guy, but he was the guy who made the alien, the original alien creature, and he did King Kong. So yeah, he's got quite the IMDb to say the least.
E.T.'s face was modeled after poet Carl Sandburg, Albert Einstein, and a pug.
Oh, Pug, there we go. Yeah, it was definitely part Pug.
Uh,
It's probably
Harrison
why he
Ford
couldn't breathe.
Harrison Ford filmed a cameo role as Elliot's school headmaster after Spielberg and Melissa Matheson, the writer
Sure.
and also Ford's girlfriend at the time, had heavily lobbied him to make an appearance. Ford eventually agreed to it because, as with most of the adult characters up to that point in the film, his face would not be seen. The scene eventually made its debut on a 1996 Laserdisc release. I mean, is that what you call the pornos? Laserdiscs.
Laser dicks, yeah, for sure.
The gag where the mother looks in the closet and sees the alien surrounded by toys was dreamed up by Robert Zemeckis.
Cool.
The scene where Elliot kisses the pretty girl at school during the frog dissection took 3 or 4 takes to get right because Henry Thomas was extremely nervous. No fucking way. That kid thought, you know what? I can get a couple of.
Yeah, you'd be at that age with a girl who's like that pretty and she's like looks like 2 years older than you. You'd be fucking bricking it, and with everyone watching as well. Jesus Christ!
Steven Spielberg stated in an interview that ET was a plant-like creature and neither male nor female.
He's just like Elliot says. He's a boy. ET's a boy.
When the film was released on video in the US, the cassette was made from green plastic as a measure to confound video pirates. By December 31st, 1988, the film had sold 15 million cassettes.
Not bad going.
I love how making it with green plastic confused video pirates.
Yeah,
It's green. Like, what the fuck? How do I copy this? It's
I
green.
don't do this. I don't do this. I'm just going to give up. I'm going to get a job in a bank. Fuck this noise.
What else have we got here? ET's communicator actually worked and was constructed by Henry Feinberg, an expert in science and technology interpretation for the public. I get that. I get that it worked. It did something. Like it went across a saw blade with a fork. But what the fuck? Like, what was it in?
What was it achieving? Yeah, I'm not sure it was achieving. I just think fundamentally it had moving parts, but I don't think it was doing much.
According to the film's novelization, E.T. is over 10 million years old.
I'm not having that.
So when he was 1 million years old, was he less wrinkly scrotum? Was he more like taut?
Yeah, I don't like that at all. I get the whole idea, like, Yoda is like 1,000, so he's still a kid when he's like 8 years old and stuff like that. But this idea is like it kind of just shits on the whole idea that ET's a kid. So I don't like that at all.
Uh, and I'll do one more. Drew Barrymore kept the red cowboy hat her character wore for Halloween as a souvenir, and is kept in her daughter's room.
That's very
Oh,
nice.
and actually, see Thomas Howell's film debut. Now like, I know he did a bunch after that. Like, oh, we know he's been on for years, but I didn't
Well,
think
he
this was
kind of
his film
dropped away
debut.
largely,
Yeah.
yeah, because he became so famous overnight, and obviously he didn't deal with it very well, famously, and kind of stepped away for a large part. And he's come back in recent years, like he did that horror anthology show, which was on Netflix, the really popular one. I forgot the name of it, The House on Haunted Hill, one of those anyway. But the only other fact I've got is the voice of ET was a lady called Pat Walsh, who was just overheard in a camera store, and they heard unsurprisingly she smoked 2 packs a day, and that's the voice they were going for. They're just like, oh, that lady sounds like she fucking rinses busters. We've got to get her in as like this childish alien. It's absolutely bizarre, but it does work strangely. What are we on to next? So, Hug to the Future, I think this is going to be an easy one. Remake, sequel, Let It Die or Leave Well Alone. There was talk of a sequel at one point. He even had a treatment from Spielberg. I think it was called like ET2, The Nocturnal Creatures or something like that. And it was going to have like, Elliot and all those like abducted by like bad aliens, and ET had to come back and help out. I'm glad it didn't get made. Leave well alone. I think for most people, and I know my love for this is based on literally watching it 2 days ago, but I think for most people with attachment to this film, this is on that elite list alongside the likes of Back to the Future and stuff, where you're just like, you can't remake this. You just have to leave. It just belongs in 1982.
Yeah, just leave it alone. I mean, it is what it is. It's a film about an alien, who dies and comes back, and his parents pick him back up. It's just
Well,
you don't
that's the
need
thing.
much
Like
for it.
the idea isn't like the idea is fine, but what makes it special is Spielberg being the director he was in 1982, the
Yeah,
aesthetics of 1982 Americana, and that's one of the things we didn't mention. Like Spielberg was so keen to push the aesthetic of Americana throughout this film. You're constantly seeing baseball gloves and all these other things. Like it's not just Americana, it's 80s Americana. It's a time and a place, and that's a big part of why this movie works. So yeah, you just have to leave it well alone. In terms of making a change, I mean, I was going to, so this is where we ask a question, if you could make one change to make this film better, I would go as something silly as like perhaps do something about his feet, or certainly with Elliot, as fantastic as he is in this film, I keep calling him Elliot. I mean, as fantastic as Henry Thomas is in this film, his screaming could just be turned down a
toned
notch.
down a little
Because
bit.
even
Yeah.
when he's excited, he does that ha noise. I'm just like, oh, dude. All right, so just take that down from like 11. It's like a 7, and the film's an immediately better, more palatable experience, dare I say.
For me, the change would be giving Elliot a line around the kind of like, dude, why are you saying goodbye to everybody? Get on the fucking ship. Let's go.
You're the only person who's changing the end of this film.
Just fucking leave.
In terms of video games, before we actually get to E.T. the video game, which obviously has a somewhat illustrious history, illustrious is the wrong word, I do apologize, but it's ironic that there's a great deal of Atari chat in this film. So you get the Space Invaders t-shirt that Michael's wearing. They reference asteroids directly about going to the arcade. There's a 2600 on the TV. I love that sequence where it's like the TV with like the peak 80s antenna with the 2600 sitting on top. I'm like, man, that is 1982 as fuck. All feels somewhat ironic given that E.T. the video game released in 1983, They quite put Atari out of business, but completely fucked the game industry.
Sorry, mate. Can you do that again from the ET? Because sorry, I lost you, so I don't know if we recorded that.
Oh, from the ET, the game, like famously crashed. Yeah, so it famously crashed the video game market in 1983, and I think like sales of video games between 1982 and 1985 dropped 97%. Obviously, the second coming sounds dramatic, but it came back with the Nintendo Entertainment System and all that other nonsense. But it's like this film does such, it's so keen to celebrate Atari and video game culture in 1982, and then ET went on to. It's odd because it's famously one of the worst video games ever made, in part, and it's blamed in part at least for the video game crash of 83. Obviously, oversaturation and the poor quality of video games across the board would have probably crashed it anyway. But I think there is truth to the idea that ET went a long way towards actually pushing it over the line. They rushed it out for Christmas. It was a terribly made game. They made far too many cartridges because it was so shit. It didn't sell. There's a documentary about the ETs being found in a landfill, about the cartridges being buried and everything. So yes, ET's connection to video games is not the finest one, but it is one of the most iconic ones. One or another. And I have played the ET game. It's not quite as bad as people say. It's not the worst game ever made, but it is largely incomprehensible. It was almost a miracle that it was made so quickly, but it's not fantastic. There's no getting around it. But if you're going to make one today, I'd probably go to like Telltale Games. The guys who did Walking Dead, Wolf Among Us. I think they're probably the guys because it'd have to be more narrative based. I think I don't want to play a fucking video game when I'm bouncing around picking flowers as ET. That just sounds gash, man.
For me, I would go with the guys that did like Hello Neighbor.
Yeah, great shout.
I'm just trying to find it because I did Dynamic Pixels.
Yeah.
Because you could kind of do it like E.T. or Elliot's side of it, where the neighbor is actually, I guess, Keys or something like that, where you're bouncing around the house and trying to hide
him from like the neighbors. Then as the game gets harder, you're trying to hide him from the government and stuff like that. Yeah, if you're doing a more kind of specifically gameplay rather than narrative-based game, I think that's a great shout. Let's go with that one. I think that was great.
Well, I like the Telltale one as well. I like the Telltale one. So I do enjoy the Telltale games. So
okay, let's call it a draw. We'll go call it a draw this week.
I'll go with that.
Fair enough. So next one is best and worst of IMDb, and I suspect we will find an abundance of both 10-star and a few 1-star reviews, I think, as well. Because some people definitely don't like this film.
747 reviews in total on IMDb. There is 290 10 stars.
Sounds about right.
So I've picked one at random. This was just after Christmas, 20th of December 2019. Ahead of its time. I still can't believe this came out in 1982. It looks like it was made a lot later with better technology. I mean, 1982 had some real old-looking stinkers, and E.T. was so ahead of its time, back when Spielberg was in his prime. I remember seeing this at the theatre multiple times, and I was born in December of 1977, so I couldn't have been any older than 4. I am watching it with my 2 girls as I type this. They are ages 10 and 8, and they are absolutely mesmerized. LOL. Also, I'd like to point out the great acting, especially by Henry Thomas. If you ever get a chance to look on YouTube, look up his original audition for this movie. It'll blow you away.
Suppose he had Spielberg in tears.
Yeah, it was. That wasn't facts. I didn't say it. It was. He brought up the emotion of his dog dying or something.
So he started crying, and Spielberg started crying. Supposedly, he hired him on the spot.
Pussies. Anyway, E.T. is a timeless classic, not to ever be forgotten. The people rating it a 1 who are saying it was boring need to stick with their Transformers movies. LOL.
A lot of lols. I don't think he actually means LOL. I
don't
like it when you say something really mean, like you fucking stick with your Transformers movies. Lol. I was like, I don't think anyone's laughing out loud. I don't think it was very funny at all. I think it's more than reasonable to find this film boring and not be a fucking Luddite. I don't think that's the case at all. And as we would likely to find out with one of the 1-star reviews.
Yep. So 21-star reviews. Okay. This was 27th September 2010. Chopping onions makes you cry also and is slightly more enjoyable. I require a new sick bucket. My old metal sick bucket has eroded after just one showing of this saturine shite. I love my old sick bucket. It had withstood many sugary sweet abominations over the years, such as Mrs. Doubtfire and Lassie Come Home, You Little Bastard. But E.T. finally eroded the metal.
Doubtfire as well.
Yeah. There were only so many insultingly manipulative, swelling orchestral strings that the metal could take. I noticed the first crack in the sick bucket appear around the scene where everybody acts downtrodden and likable. Oh, hang on, that's every scene. Look closely at the moon as Elliot's bike flies past. I swear you can see the man in the moon gagging and vomiting all over his cheese-covered surface.
He's got big on the analogy,
Even as a child, I was not particularly fond of this slow movie. Spielberg should make a movie about a man suffering from severe hemorrhoids and get John Williams to coat it in sugar. It could be quite effective.
My days. I mean, don't get me wrong. Spielberg has been guilty in the past, and he's guilty here to a certain extent of being a bit overtly saccharine with his tones and stuff like that. I think he totally gets away with it here. He doesn't always land the plane, especially with stuff and tones around childhood and stuff. Like, the stuff in this film about like being there's kind of hints to the divorce.
Yeah.
and abandonment issues. That was what I was going for. I had dismemberment in my head. I was like, no, dismemberment definitely isn't the right word I'm looking for. But abandonment issues and the whole marriage thing. But it's not too heavy-handed. It's just there if you want to grasp onto it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But with his other films, when he goes a bit overboard, and as I said, it can get a bit saturating. That it can get a bit sickly sweet at times. I think he gets away with it in this film personally. But obviously, this guy with his sick bucket, which he went heavy on,
Oh my God,
disagreed strongly.
he came up with that idea and he thought, you know what? I'm not going to double down. I'm going to fucking quadruple down on this.
He was proud of that analogy, and he was running all the way with it. Ratings and recommendations. I'm not sure if this would be a surprise or not, because obviously coming into it, I wasn't the biggest fan, or at least I remember not being the biggest fan when I was younger, but I'd only admittedly watched it once when I was very young. I've gone right the other way. It's a 5 stars for me, and it's a yes, to the point where obviously it's down to you, and I suspect you won't obviously give it a 5, but I'd be really interested to see what Riley made of this. You've got a 5-year-old kid. Would he love this film? Would he find it boring? I have no idea. I mean, it could be down to person. After all, he is your son, but I'd be interested to see how he reacts to it as a 5-year-old.
I do want to get him to watch it. I might have to wait a little while before if I'm gonna show it to him, because I don't know if I could go straight into it again. But like I said, I've only just watched it today, so,
I get that. That's fair enough. Yeah, but plus, I think some like I'm going specifically to the famous like E.T. dying sequence. It's like if you show that to a 5-year-old, is he going to be like, "Fuck, man, that's a lot"?
I don't know. I mean, I'd like to say it might affect him, but also you just said he's my kid, so it might just be.
He might just be like fucking hell. Thank God he's dead. So I got bad news, Riley.
I will.
He comes back.
I'll be so proud if we get to the end though, and Riley turns around and goes, "Go home."
Yeah,
fuck
off, E.T. Jesus, listen, I don't even dislike. Just go. We've had a nice time. Piss off. God, he's dragging this now. Well, anyway, we'll find out in the next couple of years. See what Riley thinks of it. But
for me, it's like I have changed my tune. Like hate is a strong word after I've rewatched this film.
Yeah.
I don't hate this film, but it's just meh. It's just so middle of the road. It's a 3. It is absolutely a 3 for me. And I wouldn't recommend it. I mean, it is shot beautifully, but I don't know. There's just other films I think are better out there. So I wouldn't recommend this one.
That's totally fair enough. That's totally fair enough. I think the important thing to take from this, even though like your review was obviously a lot more lukewarm than my own, is that we've both warmed to it in our own ways. Me, obviously, much more dramatically, but consider, like I said, you disliked this film more than I did in the first place. I wasn't a fan. You hated it. You've come back into it's middle of the road, and I'm suddenly like it's fucking unbelievable, to the point where we're gonna have to do Close Encounters soon, because it all feels like it's on a level. Jaws we did a few weeks ago. I grew up liking Jaws a lot, liking Jaws. We did it for the podcast. I fucking love Jaws now. Like it was so much better than I remember, and I remember it being good. This film I remember not being great, and after you watch me like, fuck, I think it's a masterpiece. So I'm like, I really like Close Encounters, but I've not seen it in a long time. I'm like, am I going to go back and watch that, and it's going to be even better than I remember? Who knows? We'll find out soon enough. But it's not my choice next week. E.T. was mine. So what are we doing next week, sir?
Well, I mean, I've never seen Close Encounters, so that'll be interesting to watch.
That will be interesting.
But when you said we'll have to do Close Encounters because we did E.T., I was thinking maybe we should do Mac and Me because we've done E.T.
that would be a shift. What did my mate bring up today? I brought up E.T. and he said, and we were talking about films that used to be on TV all the time. I was like, Cocoon was on TV. That's the second time I brought that up today. And he was Batteries Not Included. Another one of those films which just kind of disappeared. But I watched that a lot as a kid.
That was on my list.
Yeah.
So a couple of weeks ago, I was going to do Batteries Not Included, and then I changed. And I was going to do Batteries Not Included again next week. But I remember having warmer feelings to that than I did to this. But again, the more I think about it, the more I think, well, that is just like another one that's just going to be a 3-star for me, because I don't know. So I do want to do Batteries Not Included, but I think I wanted to go somewhere else that I want to go.
I know what you mean. There are certain films like you mentioned Mac and Me there. I was never attached. I was more attached to Short Circuit, for instance. Yeah. And it's like one of those films, I'll go back and I'll enjoy it, but it's got fucking 3 stars written all fucking over it,
how we haven't done Short Circuit as well.
I know, that is crazy. We will do Short Circuit soon for sure.
I'm afraid when we get to Short Circuit, we're just going to concentrate too much on Fisher Stevens. I think that's why I haven't picked it yet.
I think we could do at least 20 minutes on Fisher Stevens for sure.
Yeah.
I think that'd be worthwhile. It's giving the people what they want. Fuck that.
So I've picked a film that you have gone on record to say you you're not looking forward to doing.
Not the
So I do
Cabbage Patch
apologize for
Kids.
this. No, 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 not Cabbage Patch Kids.
It's not
Uh,
Cabbage Patch Kids, is it?
it's no, it's Garbage Pail Kids. It's not them
Garbage Pail
either.
Kids.
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah.
So the year is 1994.
Okay.
The
It's not Pulp
director,
Fiction.
no,
No, that's
although
film I
do
like.
yeah. The director is Steve Wang. Laughing at
1994.
Wang.
What's the Steve Wang?
Yeah.
1994. No, I haven't got it.
I just picked up Steve Wang's known for, and I went fucking hell because he's got Predator on there, but then he's special effects for
Oh, okay,
Predator.
fair enough.
He did a film called Drive. I don't know if you remember that with Mark Dacascos, where Mark Dacascos had an engine put into
not
his
the Ryan
chest.
Gosling one.
No, the better one in my opinion,
Oh
where he
my
had
God.
an engine put into his chest, and he.
I haven't seen that one. I don't know anything about it, but I immediately have suspicions that it might not be as good as the Nicholas Winding Refn one with. You're not a fan of that one, are you? The Ryan
No,
Gosling one.
again, I found it boring. I've only ever seen it once, so maybe I should go back.
Yeah, it's one for the cinema. It's all like tone and mood and stuff.
Let's see if I can find the tagline for this. If I have the tagline,
I know this film, though, right?
Yeah, you know this film, yeah.
Yeah.
Sci-fi's most powerful alien-human hybrid returns.
Oh, it is a proper B movie, isn't it?
Well, I mean, I'll tell you, you've called it Adult Power Rangers.
It's not Guyver, is it?
Yeah, Guyver Dark Hero.
Guyver Dark Hero. Is that the first one?
No, it's the second one. We can't do the first one.
Why can't we do the first one?
Because I don't think you can find the first one in the UK.
Is the first one better or worse? Just out of interest.
In my opinion, the first one is worse.
Okay,
I mean,
that's good.
because I think there's more action in the second one. But
Guyver Dark Hero.
I'm pretty sure you've got it. I'm pretty sure I lent you the DVD.
Oh, yeah. I remember that.
Yeah.
Of course.
Because for context, the people who are listening, Liam's from Cardiff, where he moved to Edinburgh, and his wife came down a couple of months ago to visit her mother. And the first thing I did when I found out she was in Cardiff was give her a list, a bunch of DVDs that we can't get streaming, just so you could watch them. And they are an eclectic DVD list.
That really is an eclectic collection. To give you an idea, one of them is Guyver 2. Dark Hero, or just Guyver Dark Hero, as it's called, from 1994. I mean, it's 5.8 on IMDb, 61% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's obviously not a complete hit. I remember watching it once when I was younger, but I watched the first one and I didn't get on. I didn't hate it. It just left no imprint on me whatsoever.
No, the first one is the first one is this is more action orientated.
Yeah.
I have more fun with this one, but the
first
one's
right?
The first one's Mark Hamill, and Mark Hamill's not the Guyver. Mark Hamill is just an FBI agent.
He's just a dude, isn't he?
Yeah, but the first one is on Amazon to rent or buy. For the
UK. That one does have demonstrably worse. I mean, 33% Rotten Tomatoes, 4.9 out of 10 IMDb. So yeah, the one you picked, the Dark Hero, does have undoubtedly better reviews. So
if it helps,
like I said, I've not seen that one. Like I said, I saw the original and I didn't feel compelled to watch anymore, but more than willing to give it a go.
If it helps. Guyver, character Sean Barker, is played by David Hayter, who is Solid Snake.
Oh, that's pretty cool. So he's going to have the
original.
Going to have a great voice, if nothing else.
Yeah.
So that Jesus Christ, we're going from E.T. to Guyver, Dark. Fuck, I forgot what it's called.
Dark Hero.
Dark Hero. This is going to be an interesting one. Anything else to add before we wrap this up?
Yeah, I'll just pop a message that we've had off one of our listeners, Becky Leonardis. I do apologise if I have butchered your name.
It's a great second name, isn't it? It
is outstanding.
Very 300.
Yeah. I just listened to your Die Hard episode. That's going back. Everyone loves this movie. It pretty much is the best action movie of all time. There's other movies that come close, but still, when John tells Al on the walkie-talkie that he should have been more supportive of Holly and been behind her more, tell her she's the best thing that ever happened to a bum like me. That line is sweet, funny, and kind of lame. We don't need a remake. They'll just fuck it up. And no TV show or prequel either. This is why Hollywood sucks. Leave the classics alone. So she's a big fan of the original Die Hard.
And I agree with just about everything she said there, especially about they've done the sequels. We don't need a prequel. We don't need a remake. It's like Die Hard's run its course. It should have stopped at, let's be honest, at 3. I'll allow 4 because 4 is basically, the only reason I allow 4 is because it looks better sitting next to 5. But 5 was the death of the fucking series. Like, that was proof. It's run its course. We should have stopped before then. We've gone overboard. Like, one more round, you got knocked out. Just fucking leave it be. It's, the thing is, especially with, I've mentioned a few times with like 4K restorations and stuff, a lot of these films look absolutely gorgeous now. Like, and this isn't one of those films where we have on nostalgia for, there's a reason people love Die Hard. It's a wonderfully shot, amazingly acted film, which still looks great today. If you're watching it on 4K, we've mentioned a bunch of times these films that if you were told it was filmed now, but was set in 1988 or whatever it was, you'd believe it. It's that good looking a film. So it just leave well alone. I absolutely agree. So yeah, with Becky on this one. Is that it? We good? We good?
Yeah, I'll just leave it at the 1 for now. So yeah, we're good, mate.
Okay, I've been Liam, he's been Rob, and you have been listening to the Hey Guys podcast. Cheers, guys. Catch you later. Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys. Bye now.
Oh, and before I forget, where can folk reach us if they were so inclined to?
Well, you can actually reach us on Hey You Guys 80s at Facebook, Instagram, and on Twitter. But if you want to send us a mail, do heyyouguys80s@gmail.com. Send us in your recommendations. Send us in your thoughts about any of the episodes. Just literally talk to us. We'll have a one-sided talk with you on the podcast.
Yeah. We're nice folk. Get in touch. But no, cheers, guys. Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys. Bye now.
Hey, you